The sport of off-road racing is full of incredible stories, wild characters, legends, and even villains. We cover it all on offroadracer.com, but there's only so much we can put down in an article. Sometimes we have to dig a little deeper, and that means sitting down with some of our industry's most influential characters and hitting record. Welcome to the Off-Road Racer podcast, a Mad Media production, made exclusively for offroadracer.com. Each month, we'll go beyond the dirt into the homes, shops, and lives of the most interesting and game-changing icons of our sport. You'll hear about their history, success, failure, and everything in between as we pull back the curtain and reveal the stories of their lives. I'm your host, Matt Martelli, and this is the Off-Road Racer podcast. I'm Matt Martelli. This is the Off-Road Racer podcast, and I'm here with really a Hall of Famer, Russ Wernimont. What's up, Russ?
Just another day in paradise, California.
Yeah, we were just talking about, you guys build a lot of parts for bikes, and we were just talking about a new shock that you guys have come out with, and that's doing pretty well.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see Carson sort of coming into his own and him getting to the point where he can develop things, design it on a computer, and carry it all the way through and test it, and you see the finished product on bikes being sold. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, it's cool to see, him have the same passion for not just off-road racing, but for building products that are solving problems as well.
Yeah, it is. It's really rare these days. I mean, this next generation, you sort of wonder about him, but I'm pretty proud of him, and we've had him with a lot of good people through his development years with Scott Taylor and all the other racers were around that I think we got him in pretty good shape to be a good kid and turning into a good man.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, obviously he's had a successful, foray into UTV racing, but man, how cool was it for you to see him drive the Simon & Simon truck that you built and then drive the shit out of it?
It's really cool. I mean, it was really neat when we got to build those first trophy trucks, and that truck's really special. And to see him drive it and do so well with it and be so comfortable with that type of machine and the speeds they go, and he's in control. He's really good. He's the driver I never was.
Yeah. No, it's funny because Bob Bauer told me a story about you. I think you rode with him in one race.
Well, yeah, the way things went back in the old days was you had one driver, Robbie or Rob Mack or whoever, and they were going to drive the whole race. But if something stupid happened, like one year at the 1,000, Robbie rolled the truck at mile 300, and then the next day he had a different race to go to. And so Bob Bauer and I hopped in, and I drove on a course that I never pre-ran, and Bob was my GPS. We didn't have fancy stuff back then, so he was calling turns for the next however many hours, and we got it done. And really cool. Every time I've gotten to hop in a truck and drive, Bob Bowers is in the right seat, and we just had a blast. It was fun.
That's pretty cool. You weren't from the West Coast originally. Talk about how you got involved in off-road racing, because it's a pretty cool story.
Yeah, I'm originally from Toledo, Ohio, and I always loved racing and trucks and things back there. And I used to have, racing was different back there. All we had to do was we ran sand drags, and I had a Jeep with a big motor, and it was fun. But if you saw a magazine or a commercial on TV, it was California, and you thought that's where you had to go. So 19-year-old kid from Toledo, Ohio, got on a plane and went over to Precision Preparation and knocked on the door and talked to Cal and Tommy, and they let me hang out. So that was where it started.
Yeah, you literally started by sweeping floors there, yeah?
Oh, yeah. No, I basically, they were like, okay. And I said, can I just hang out? I'm on vacation. I'll do whatever for a couple days. And, the first day you swept the floor, and the next day Tommy says, you know how to do this? And I go, yeah, you know how to do this? Yeah, I might have lied a couple times, but I'm going to figure it out and get this done. But I was successful with whatever they asked me to do, and it was really cool to have people like that teaching you.
Yeah, what was that escalation like? Because, you come from an era where, builders were hands-on with everything. There wasn't a thing on the truck that you didn't have to figure out, whether it was body work or, welding or, later on designing the vehicle. Well, what was that like?
To me, that is the real appeal to off-road racing, because I looked at other forms of racing, and, if you go to an IndyCar shop, they buy a car, they buy pieces. They don't really build the car the way off-road does. And to have basically no rules, you get to create what you want. That was really, it intrigued me that you were able to create something better than the next guy. And that was what was really cool in the old days, is that everybody built their own stuff.
Yeah.
And we didn't all play follow the leader. I looked at what they did and I go, that's cool, but I got another idea. I'm going this way. So it was neat to have several car builders all work in different directions, but all having competitive stuff and all having a good time with it.
Well, that, and too, like, you had to do prep. So it wasn't just, hey, I built this car, good luck. It was, you were doing prep and then you were doing changes, right?
Right. It was really neat when I started working for Cal and Tommy. They, at the time they had a customer, Michael Nesmith, with the Time Rider truck. And so they said, we'll let this new guy work on that truck. And I prepped it from start to finish with Tommy looking over my shoulder. And we went to the first race, which was San Felipe, and we won. And I go, wow, this is pretty cool. This is what racing's all about.
Right.
So that was really the beginning of the drug that keeps you coming back.
Yeah.
And, everything that came up in the Toyota shop, they were building the new cars, and they said, oh, we need somebody to carve a body out of foam and shape it and do things. And they looked at me and they said, you know how to do that? And I go, well, I've done a lot of body work. I worked in a body shop back in Ohio, so sure. And I got to do the front fenders and hood on the car back in, I guess it'd be 84.
Yeah.
So whatever came up, I wasn't going to turn it down. I was going to figure out how to get it done.
Yeah, no, that's cool. It's cool that they embraced it. And then too, like, walking into such a legendary shop like PPI, that must have been, pretty invigorating and radical. Was it intimidating at all?
A little bit. I'd been around a few race shops back east, but none of them were off-road. We had IndyCar shops and dragsters and things like that. So I'd seen a nice shop before. And where I worked was actually a frame shop, and we worked on a lot of nice cars, Porsches and BMWs. And as a kid, that's what I grew up doing, is cutting cars in half and putting them back together after people wrap them around trees. And so to work on a car and see it torn apart and work on it was nothing new. I was just excited to get to work with a quality bunch of people and have the opportunity.
Well, and then so afterwards you left PPI and you basically became their biggest competition.
Yeah, when I was there, I don't think they ever thought I would be that, but I learn a lot every day. You look at what everybody does, and some of it you say good idea, some of it you say I'm not going to follow that guy. And I had a couple cool opportunities. I built a Blazer pre-runner for Albert Arciero, which let me build a car from start to finish and really learn a lot. And then I built a Dodge Ram Charger for Roger Mears, and Mike Moore owned it. And then I got the opportunity to work on the hay hauler because Stan Gilbert, I believe, was the guy that crashed it, and Venable needed it fixed. And they showed it to me, and they thought it needed a whole new frame. And I was like, no, I know how to fix this. So they said, you got the job, go for it.
And the Venable, like that was an iconic truck. Like through that process, I mean, you're basically working on, the guts, I guess I would say, of the truck. And like, did you learn a lot from that process?
Yeah, that was a truck that John Nelson built, and he was one of the creative guys of the day, just, building what he thought was going to work. And when I got the chance to work on it, Venable says, who should drive this thing? And I was like, there's this kid, Robbie, and we're either going to look really good or really stupid. But we gave him a shot, and I did good at trying to keep him under control. And like John Nelson said, he built the truck. I made it Robbie proof.
Right.
So, and then the Goodrich truck was just the next generation.
Well, describe that jump, because, that ushered in trophy trucks, right?
Basically, the jump from the hay hauler to the Goodrich truck, I looked at things, and everything I build's an evolution. I hate to build two things the same. So I looked at it, and I had my list of things I wanted to improve, and shock absorbers were one of them. And I ended up making my own shocks. The first race didn't go so well, but we got some help and got proper pieces inside that I wasn't particularly the shock guru at that point. That was the beginning of it, whatever, 30 some years ago.
Right.
So it was a steep learning curve to get the shocks up to speed, but that truck had our own shocks on it, and it didn't take long, and we won either the second or third race we brought it to, and then it won a bunch of races in a row after that. And it was, I don't want to say cheating, but it was a big enough step above what was out there and what the hay hauler was.
Sure.
That you go, wow, these other guys got some work to catch this thing.
So where did that idea come from? I mean, did you come up with that idea because you were looking at other race chassis and other disciplines and going like, hey, if we go from this, basically a stock frame, with the factory pickup points to, let's build a race car and tube chassis it, put the suspension pickup points where we want them, where they're optimum, make the length and the footprint of the car, better, because like that hadn't been done at that time, not in trucks, right?
Right. The Toyotas were sort of handmade tube frame cars, but they were on a different scale because of the smaller engines and different things they were working with. And when I built that Goodrich truck, you get done and look at it and go, boy, if I put 10 more feet of tubing in this thing, I could throw the frame away.
Right.
And the frame was the limiting factor on everything for wheel travel and how tall the car was and what you couldn't get done with that thing. So as I raced and met people, I got a chance, Venable had his Hemet buddies that wanted something built, and they brought that Jeep project into the Venable shop, and I said, well, okay, let me see what I can do with it. Unfortunately, it had a straight six engine, and it had a list of things that to me were handicaps to build what you want.
Sure.
So it was a cool vehicle. It did okay at first. LeDuc got a hold of it. He did pretty well with it. But as I built that one, I had the vision for the Simon truck. And somehow I met Paul and Dave, and they were crazy enough cowboys that they said, let's go. Let's do this.
Yeah. Well, it's just a crazy thing to think about. Like, okay, so 19-year-old kid from Ohio, right? Mm-hmm. Worked in a body shop, so no engineering, right? And through working in shops, you're applying different pieces of different theories, and you're like, this is working, this is breaking. We're going to make an adjustment here. But it wasn't like this huge agenda from a factory team with millions of dollars behind it. It was just basically you and a small group of other people who had given you little components of what now we know as trophy trucks and unlimited trucks. And, again, I'm biased, right? Mm-hmm. But it is the only form of unlimited racing in the world, right? It's like if you can come up with a better concept, whether it's suspension, the engine, the transmission, whatever you can, and you can build it and it'll last for, 400, 500, 600, 1,000 miles, then go for it. But the ingenuity that you had in that era it's pretty remarkable. Do you reflect back on that and go like, it was really cool. It was neat to be given opportunities and have people trust you. And I don't know how to explain it other than certain people have the ability to see things in their mind that other people just can't see. Sure.
And, Carson works on the computer and he spins things around and looks at it. And he says, "Isn't this cool?" And I said, "Yeah, that's what I saw 30 years ago. Only I could look at a flat piece of paper and see that." And so it was a gift. And I have it. Carson's learning about it. A lot of other people probably have it too, but it was really neat to have that type of a gift that could let me see where I was going and what I was doing. And, to build something like a Simon trophy truck, start to finish in 6 months with no blueprints, no big machine shops, and no massive influx of money. If you went to modern day shops today and told people you wanted that done, they'd laugh at you.
Yeah, can't do it. No, it's going to be 2 years, $1.5 million, and we have this whole shop at our resources, right?
Right.
Attention Off-Road Nation. The Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship comes roaring through Parker, Vegas, and Barstow in 2024. It's 3 of the most prestigious and competitive off-road races in the sport. It all starts with the return of the Parker 400 in beautiful Arizona, January 10th through the 14th. Then it's the biggest, baddest, most grueling off-road race on the planet. The BF Goodrich Tires Mint 400 comes roaring back into Sin City, Las Vegas, March 6th through the 10th. And finally, the climactic conclusion of the Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship, the California 300, returns to Barstow, October 2nd through the 6th. Visit unlimitedoffroadracing.com for complete details. The 2024 Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship is here.
It's really interesting. It's a cool thing too, because when you think about like the evolution of now street vehicles, and they're going through that same evolution where it started with the Raptor, now the TRX, now the Fox truck, and the other ones that are being made in and around that, and that's becoming a thing. That's watching the Fox guys engineer around the limitations of the Chevy platform. They had to gusset things and move pickup points and all the usual stuff, but it makes me acutely aware of the limitations, like you said, of the having to even work with the stock frame, right? That is the limitation. So I'm excited to see, this evolution. And at some point, guys are going to go like, hey, actually, we want a full tube chassis, pre-runner for the street or whatever it is, right? But, you should take a minute to reflect that you are, one of the main agitators in creating that, right? And creating the modern era that we have now of trophy trucks. I mean, it's incredible,
It's pretty cool. It's funny to look back at it because I did do a lot of really cool things.
Yeah.
But when you're, especially being a kid and getting opportunities, you don't ever look at something going, oh, someday somebody's going to think I'm somebody.
Yeah.
I was worried about today and what I was going to do for next race, because if I won today,
Yeah.
these other guys they're coming. So every week we better come back better than we were last week. And
Yeah.
And I just, for the longest time, I would spend everything I had to go race and win, and wasn't concerned about making money. And I'm fortunate that I've done okay, but so many people, especially today, the world's driven by money. You can't survive without it.
Sure.
But as a kid, things were different back then. In the late 80s, I had a small shop. I slept in my shop. I lived on a couch. I built race cars. I worked every day of the year. And to me, that was normal. It's what I wanted to be doing.
Yeah. No, it was back then. That was the dream, right? It was like, hey, I get to make race vehicles, man. I'm a race car builder. So at what point did you start building short course and hook up with Scotty Taylor?
I believe it was 89. We took Robbie Gordon back to Crandon, and basically didn't know anybody back there. And Scotty's quite a personality, and
to say the least.
And it didn't take long for him and I to click and have some fun and cause some trouble back there. So after the race, he was like, I want to build one of those, because he was racing a little Ranger and a buggy at the time, and he's like, trucks are cool. I got to have one of these.
And what truck did you take back there with Robbie?
The Goodrich truck.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And it was funny because we got there a day late because bad weather and different stuff. And And, nobody really knew who we were. And we go to practice, and we're like, we missed Friday practice or whatever day it was.
Right.
And we're like, will you let us run class 1? We'll start in the back just so that we can get some laps in the track. Well, we won. We lapped everybody.
Right.
And they're like, don't let that truck anywhere near us anymore. The buggies at that time were faster than trucks.
They were dominating.
Yeah. But when that truck showed up, it changed everybody's opinion on what they got to do back there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even a short course truck.
Right. It was a desert truck.
Yeah.
It's funny because, now everybody just knows what's now, right? So they're like Pro 2s and Pro 4s. Mm-hmm. Those just fell out of the air, right?
Sure.
But it is derived from a trophy truck, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting how that evolution happened. And so then you went on to build a pretty unique truck for Scotty that was a center seat, right?
Right.
Well, why did you choose it? What made you choose to make it a center seat? Was that because he was driving a buggy and you wanted to keep him in the center? Or?
No, it's I looked at the whole package and how the car was going to be built. And at that time, we didn't have rules, didn't have frame rules or different things. So we said, we get to build what we want. If you sit in the middle, we're going to build a skinnier car. There were rules that said it had to be full width cab at some point. So at the A-pillar, it was wide and the rest of it got narrow. And sitting in the center, Scott's a Midwest guy. Snowmobiles are cool.
Yep.
He sat in that truck and he goes, this is like riding a snowmobile. A right turn and a left turn are all the same. You don't have a bad turn now.
Right.
And the car was much more balanced. The right to left, it was just really a clean package. It wasn't that car had anything amazing, different, other than it was comfortable to drive. And the whole time I built cars, whether it was with Robbie or Rob Mack or whoever, if you can make the guy in the car comfortable, he's going to go fast because he's not thinking about the car.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge part of it. And then, also as a builder and a fabricator and a prep guy, like having that relationship with the driver where you can actually communicate and make changes and understand each other. Mm-hmm. Like that's a big advantage too.
Yeah.
If you're not getting along with your driver, chances are, your adjustments are not going to be favorable to his driving.
Yeah. And Scott really is a cool guy. Him and I guess, are a lot alike. I would go back there to help him. And like that center seat truck, that truck was built start to finish in 90 days.
Wow.
And won its first race with basically its first tank of gas. And it's neat to help Scott because I can lay out what we're doing. I'll tell him have this, and this. I'll sit on the table when I get there. I'll be there Friday, and on Monday when I go home, we had basically a truck sitting there.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks later, I'd come back and I'd lay out shock absorbers. Okay, this is how long, this is how much. Machine all the ends, and then we'll come back and we'll put those together. So that truck was built start to finish in 90 days.
So then other people saw your success building short course trucks, and you built some more, right?
Yeah, not too many. I really enjoy helping Scott. And it was funny because Herzogs came to me with Jimmy Johnson at one point, and we went round and round with them, and they wanted a truck built, and they actually tried to put a stick in our spokes one year, and I still helped Scott. And they were really bummed because we beat them.
Right.
So they came back at the end of the year and they said, we're ready. We're going to pay you. You're going to not work for Scott. You're going to help us, and you're going to make us win. I said, well, Scott and I are pretty good buddies. I'm going to help Scott for free. So you guys have a good time. We'll see you at the race. And that was, it was neat. I wasn't rich. I wasn't not needing money. But to me, helping my buddy and having a good time was more important than working with guys with money that I probably wasn't going to fit into that program. So some days you just got to go do what's right for you.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, that's kind of what racing's about, right? It's like, especially from a builder aspect, is like if you can concept something and build it and then go prove it. You know, it's very unique because most people who are building cars just to look good, right? Hey, look, it's a pretty looking, you know, doors go this way and all this stuff. And the brutality of especially short course racing is, hey, your design, it failed, right? Because it's going to be in front of everybody. It's going to break and it's a failure, right? And that your name is attached to that. Who built that car?
Yeah.
Right. And so then to go, you know, to task with building a vehicle, building in a short amount of time with limited resources, and then going out there and getting it to the right driver and having everything click and then kicking everybody's ass. Boy, that's a good feeling, right?
It is. It's really one of the highlights of my whole career was the summers I'd spend with Scott Taylor. And, you know, being from Ohio, and I spent a lot of time at the lake in Michigan. Like right now I'm missing the lake because 4th of July is big time back there at the lake.
Sure.
But I really enjoyed going back there. Midwest people are great. All the Flannerys and all the people back in Crandon, we really had a good time in the heyday of the fun races at Crandon.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and it's interesting to see the evolution of short course. And, you know, again, it's like what's important to me is to have these conversations be public so that people know where it came from, right? They don't, you know, they don't think like, you know, Polaris didn't invent the buggy, right? They refined it to a point and they made it approachable from a financial aspect, and they're great vehicles, right? Just like Kawasaki and Honda and everybody else. But that came from our culture, from guys like you, right? And I think it's an important thing to point that out. Did you have a preference of building short course cars or desert cars, or was it more about your relationship with Scott?
It was more of the relationship. I wanted to enjoy what I was doing.
Yeah.
I can't stand working on a team where you're not happy to be there.
Yeah.
And all the years I raced with Scott, I can't recall ever having a bad conversation with him.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the type of guy that him and I would look at a problem and we'd be starting to talk about it, and he'd turn around and run off to the machine shop and be making the part and be back before we're, you know, it's neat to work with people that you think so much alike and you're so much in tune with, you know, that it was never a conversation I had to talk him into anything. He either came to me and says, what are we doing? What tires you running? How do you want to do it? Tell me where to go. And then there'd be days where I'd say, what do you need? What, you know, why can't you put the car down on the bottom? It needs to be there.
Sure.
And he says, it just won't do it. It's telling me no. So I would come back and say, we're going to change the setup and do this and do that. And you got to be able to drive down here in this corner or they're going to get by you.
Yeah.
So mutual respect is a lot of what goes on and makes life fun to work with certain people. And, you know, we had a blast back there. Scott Taylor's a really cool guy. He's into airplanes. He would pick me up in his little homemade private planes and fly around, and we had a blast. I mean, that was a whole separate adventure from racing, is getting to and from and see what kind of a plane Scott's going to show up with this weekend.
Right. Yeah, no, he's definitely a unique character. I mean, you know, did you think though, you know, because you kind of stepped away from off-road to focus on your motorcycle business and build that, so you actually had some income, right?
Right, and that sort of came by accident. You know, when I was working for Jimmy Smith and Simon's truck, we had Don Vesco, motorcycle guy, build some engines for us. And he had, his right-hand man was Bill Talley, and we all worked together and had a good time. And then they were helping do motors for Page Jones racing Saturday Night Thunder in Ventura. And so it's a race, let's go. I'm here to help. And one thing led to another, and I accidentally ran into Stan Fox, and he came to my shop because I made parts for him because he wrecked something. And he goes, "What's that?" And I go, "It's a it's a fender for a motorcycle." And I made them out of steel, handmade. And he says, "Wow, sell those to my brother." And I'm like, "Who's your brother?" Well, Fred Fox owns Drag Specialties and Parts Unlimited. Fred was a special guy. He passed away, I believe, in the past year, but it was neat when you could work with people of that caliber on a handshake and do what you say you're going to do. And
Sure.
it developed into something really cool, and I made good money and got myself through, I don't know what you want to call the middle portion of your years.
Sure.
At a comfortable pace, because off-road, I was somehow tagged as the fastest guy for cheap.
Right.
And I wasn't going to make a living doing that. So I figured out how to make some money. I built Harley parts they're the best Harley parts there are. That's how we do things. And to keep my racing fix, I helped Scott Taylor and had a blast doing it.
Yeah.
And now it's sort of interesting to look at, because racing with Carson is getting to be so much fun and such a good program through Kawasaki that we're going, this Harley stuff's sort of getting in the way. I'd almost rather be racing again.
Well, and it's what's cool is to see Carson share in the same passion that you shared. You know, not just, you know, hey, I like to go racing, but the mechanical problem solving, right?
Right.
Like some of the conversations I've had, like we had lunch with your son yesterday, and when we're leaving, Killian was with me. He goes, how old is Carson? And I'm like, I think he's 23, you know? and he goes, Jesus, see, he has a lot of knowledge, right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, that was one of the things I remarked on, and when he came racing with UTVs is, you know, he had success right away.
Right.
And part of that he attributes to his understanding of mechanical, you know, what the car is doing, what it's capable of doing. And it was interesting because he attributed that to obviously his relationship with you and learning everything, but also our C car racing and understanding the dynamics of what a vehicle's doing, being able to see that, make changes, you know, and implement them. So it's really cool, you know, to see that. But also, you know, like my hope, I don't know if it's your hope, but like I hope that he is able to have a really successful career in UTV racing. But he's already in trucks too.
Well, you know, everybody's dream is a truck.
Right.
You know, Kawasaki is an awesome company to work with, and we really enjoy what we're doing in that we get to race things that nobody's raced before.
Yeah.
They look at us as car guys. They're bike guys. So we have something to offer them. It's neat to have conversations with people and know that they're actually paying attention, and to see our ideas and our things appear on production vehicles.
Yeah.
So it's really rewarding to work with people that respect what you're doing and have confidence in you. And, you know, when Carson ran that very first race, it was Parker. He'd driven a lot of cars, but he'd never raced an off-road race.
Right.
So we built a brand new car, and everybody's like, oh, it's a Kawasaki. It doesn't have a motor. It's slow. This thing's going to be,
Totally.
you know. So we get there, and we're talking, and he's worried, and he's like, how do you think we're going to do? And I said, we're going to win. I said, we came here to win. That car's capable. You're capable. You go drive around. We have a plan. You know, halfway through the race, he's like, hey, where'd everybody go?
Yeah.
And,
and that wasn't a fluke, though, because then he backed it up, right? That was
Right.
the thing is I remember, and everybody's like, well, you know, everybody can have a lucky race, you know, all the things, right? But then it was like again and again. Mm-hmm. And then at every race, consequently, other than a few that he's had some issues at, and even those ones, it was like, cool, he's down. He basically should be out of it. And then he comes back.
Yeah.
And he comes back through the field. And everybody's tripping because it's like they're racing turbos, and you know they're getting beat by an NA car.
Yeah, and it's funny to see people, you know, they think you're cheating, they think you're doing something, and it's no, we're just doing our job right.
Yeah,
you know, I look at other people and what they're doing, and I go, man, they're leaving so much on the table. The day we have a motor, watch out.
Yeah,
it's going to be fun.
Well, I mean that's racecraft. That comes from, you know, your experience and really understanding the mechanical abilities of the vehicle, right? Like looking at it and really going, like you were just describing how Scotty Taylor was cornering. Mm-hmm. You know,
most people can't see that, right? It's like you were talking about your gift of being able to see things in a, you know, 3-dimensional way and go, okay, this, you know, we need stiffer springs on the right side, so it does this on the left or whatever, right?
Right.
You know, it's understanding all that stuff, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Off-road race fans, the third annual California 300 off-road race comes blasting back into Barstow this fall, Thursday, October 3rd through Sunday, October 6th. Don't miss your chance to see hundreds of the country's elite desert off-road racers go door to door on a brutal 300-mile desert race course and witness the exciting conclusion of the unlimited off-road racing championship season. Visit thecalifornia300.com for more information and to purchase spectating, camping, parking, and VIP tickets. The California 300 returns!
And Carson is neat because he's developing that gift also.
Totally.
And you know, our little Kawasaki that he's been racing in a straight line is not fast.
No.
You know, when they were trying to get us kicked out, I said, hey, let's take the 5 top cars. We're going to run a, whatever you want, 1/8 of a mile drag race from dead stop. Then we're going to go see what top speed is, and we're going to put them on scales. I said, I guarantee you I have the heaviest, slowest car here.
Yeah.
But you can run it hard all day long. It doesn't fail. It corners way better than the other cars. And, you know, that first race, he's at Parker. He says, I was right behind so-and-so ready to pass him, and we hit a graded road. And all of a sudden the dust was gone. I wasn't even
out.
Yeah, I wasn't even in their dust anymore. He says, we got to the end of the graded road, started on the windies. He says, it wasn't 2 minutes I passed that guy.
Yeah.
You know, so, and he's persistent. He don't give up. He's got a good attitude and a never quit kind of, you know, last year at the Mint, that race for some reason has got our number every year, and he was within sight of the finish line, and a U-joint in the steering column broke.
Yeah.
And most people would have sat there and kicked rocks. He MacGyvered it together, finished the race, and ended up second.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, you're proud of him for what he does. We were bummed that it happened to us, and we fixed that part. It ain't happening again. But, you know, to see that type of persistence, the guy that rode with him is a pretty good little MacGyver too. And he says, I just stood back and watched Carson. He was going to get her done.
Yeah.
So it was neat.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I mean, you know, you've built a lot of stuff. Is there a truck still in your mind that you have yet to build?
You know, it's sort of funny. As you get older, you sort of, you know, Bob Bauer describes your life as a one-lap race. And at what point do you start looking at the end and going backwards and going, what else we got to get done before the end of the race? And, you know, Carson and I talk about trucks all the time. And we have ideas. He's starting to draw things. But where we're at today is this Kawasaki and the car we're building and the way we're going about it. I would expect it to run with a spec trophy truck.
Yeah.
Which is pretty tall order for a UTV, but I would put money on it that within a few years we'll be there.
Yeah. It's remarkable to see the evolution too of UTVs because, again, that's like this relationship where, you know, buggies, and we'll start with like Chenis, and, you know, they evolved, and then, you know, in combination with short course racing and desert racing, you know, this tech has evolved, and then, you know, these UTV companies are born, and they put it out in mass. And of course, when you're building a production vehicle, you got to compromise, right?
Sure.
You have to build it cheap. It's got to be under X, you know, amount of dollars. It can't be like super wazoo race car stuff. But still, for me, it's been really cool to share the stoke with people because, you know, being a kid from the Midwest who I got dropped into El Cajon in like 1984 was like, you know, heaven, you know, in terms of off-road, and especially being a young male, right? Mm-hmm. I was like, this is like kid in a candy shop dream stuff, right? But the rest of the world didn't know about it, and they couldn't do it and feel it. And now with UTVs, they can, and I think that's a really that's a really cool thing, and a big advantage for our culture going forward is to be able to share that with people and go like, all right, that thing that you thought was going to, make you flip over or crash or whatever, you just went over it at 60 and barely felt it. And it's like that aha moment. When you were, coming up and building stuff, were there some moments like that where you built something and you saw what it was doing and you're like, okay, we got something?
Yeah. That when we built that Goodrich truck in '89 and we did our own shocks and started learning what could be out of a shock absorber, it really changed how you looked at things.
Right.
We went to Barstow that year to run 4th of July in Barstow, which was, don't know who thought of doing that, but it was hot out.
Well, we changed that, fortunately. Now we're in October, but
yeah,
the old Fireworks 250 was, I remember melting my shoes off when I was a kid at Tech and Contingency. It was 110.
Yeah. But when you could go around that loop at Barstow and go, whatever there was, 5, 10, there were a certain amount of ditches where you marked them in your head because there was no GPS or anything else.
Right.
You go, we're going to slow down for those. The rest of them, you can run them over.
Right.
And with a driver like a young Robbie Gordon, he was like, I'm good with that. And dust or no dust, if you weren't at a danger zone, he was going.
Yeah.
And it was pretty impressive what those cars could do.
Yeah.
And then,
but even still, those were like, what 18 inches of travel back then, you think?
I don't remember. You'd be pushing to get 20 in the back and, 16, 18 in the front.
Yeah. So half of what we have today.
Right.
Right. And then 2, you were 35-inch tire back then?
Yeah.
Right. So, and a smaller tire size. Like, did you think that it was going to, get to where it's at now, or where, 36 inches of travel, 40-inch tires?
Yeah, you can see that the evolution takes you places. I look at a trophy truck and I go, okay, it's got a motor, it's got this, it can run a 40-inch tire. I look at a spec truck and the amount of motor it has. I go, don't know if I build a brand new one today, I might put 37s on it. Sure. Because I'm not sure that 500 or 600 horsepower is going to pull a 40-inch tire.
No.
And, you have to be able to look at the components you have and make the best package you can out of what's available. Right. And that's the key to, bigger's not always better. And, evolution is cool, but, I look at things like, even back in the 90s, I thought, I want a Mexico truck and a U.S. truck. Sure. I don't want to bring the same vehicle to every race. Yeah. And even like the Goodrich truck, if we were going to go to a short course race with it, I had different I-beams, different springs, different, and I don't think everybody else was doing that back then. Yeah. No, it's very interesting because, like, I was talking to Dave, and one of the things he brought up is being able to change the ride height of a vehicle as one of the future evolutions, and to disconnect sway bars, right? So it's like, okay, cool. You have a setup for the high speed graded road that's basically a rally setup, but like that's more Mexico than it is like Barstow is rough. So you've got to let the suspension free, right? And it's going to be a looser truck, but it's going to eat all those bumps, right? Like there is no perfect solution for everything. Yeah, and it's neat to see different technology come into different sports. The sway bar, the Ultra Wheels truck in '93 had a sway bar you could turn on and off from inside the car. Yeah. As far as ride heights, I haven't done it to an off-road car yet. I used to race dirt late models, and we actually had hydraulic weight jacks in the car that you could raise and lower each corner to adjust cross weight as the race was going on. Right. And to be able to bring that into a trophy truck, the last trophy truck I built for Jimmy Smith, the next one was going to have that. Right. I look at what exists today, and Masons have done an awesome job to build a 4-wheel drive and make it as, bulletproof as it has. Yeah. But I still look at things and I go, I think there ought to be more. they've brought the quality and, call it prettiness of a well-made truck long ways.
Yeah.
But I think there's things that can be done with shocks and springs and ride heights, and I've got some pretty goofy ideas going on in my head that we'll see if they ever show up somewhere.
Well, I hope to see those. Recently you got inducted into the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame. What was that like for you?
It's really cool. It was neat to be recognized for all the stuff that I'd done. It's neat to look back at it and go, wow, I crammed a lot of stuff into those, 10 years that I was super concentrated in off-road.
Right.
And probably the coolest thing out of it was Carson did a lot of the work, and he got the history lesson. And like you said, the history of our sport is what we can't let die. So he was able to see the history. He got to meet a lot of the people I worked with. And it was really cool because like Tom Morris got in there at the same time.
Yeah.
Tommy was my boss at Toyota.
Yeah.
Tommy and I get along great. A lot of people don't get along with Tommy. I think a lot of people are intimidated by people.
Sure.
Tommy is a smart guy.
He's a very smart guy.
Yeah. So I look at smart people and I go, I want to hang around smart people and know what they got going on.
100%. Well,
other people get scared and go, we can't talk to that guy.
Well, and then like what I always look at is like this thing we do as Americans where we shelve people at a certain age. We're like, you're retired, therefore we can't listen to anything you said. It's really weird. You go to Europe and it's like the grandfather is always still there as part of the business or what have you, because he's like the database. Hey, grandpa, what do we do here?
Right.
Or how did you do this? Right. And we don't do a good job of that in America. And that's one thing, I look at guys like Tommy in particular and, Bill Savage, who's our tech director, like lots of different guys. And I'm like, hey, I have some questions, right? Mm-hmm. Like, how did we get here? What do we do about this? And, look at these things and how do we make sure that going forward we have, a good path forward and control of it. And get credit for it. I think that's one of the things too that drives me to do the podcast, but also other things is like I can see hundreds of millions of dollars worth of off-road products being sold, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are brands that they didn't make that. No. You know what I mean? They just looked at something and went, "Hey man, lift kits." Right? Mm-hmm. And we're a lift kit company and hey, we're going to make our money. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, I've learned that it's, from a sustainability standpoint, if the people from the culture are driving the business, then they're making decisions based on the culture and not just like, hey, did we maximize profits here? Right? Oh, we can make it a little bit cheaper and it might break, but the lawsuits won't, cost more than the profit, so we're okay. Yeah. It's like, no, we're gonna make some really high end stuff that never breaks and never has a failure, because that's what we do in racing, right?
Yep. So
yeah, it's interesting to learn from people like Tommy, who, like yourself, you come from a very unique set of experiences, right? Mm-hmm. Versus somebody, and I'm not trash talking kids, but like, yeah, it's all theory until you go race it, right?
Sure.
And prove it, mm-hmm. So it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. And, racing and off-road in particular is to me the giant compromise. I mean, with a road racing car, you can say we're looking for the optimal this. Off-road, there's no optimal anything. We got to make a car that'll go 100 and whatever down a graded road and make the corner at the end. We got to go this far in the air and land and not kill the people inside the car. It's a giant compromise, but you have to make an overall package that does everything well and nothing really bad. and nothing to the point where the driver's worried about the car biting them and wrecking their stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's neat. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
And it's what people like me, the challenge is a big part of it.
No, totally. And you can see that too, like your house and your shop are co-located, right? And that's always one thing that I see with like a certain type of person that is always thinking and problem solving, is they need to be able to go out, walk out of their house, go into the shop and go, hey, I'm going to make this. I'm going to take something from my mind and I'm going to create it and create this solution or this product or whatever, right? And it's funny how, you know, I have lots of friends that, you know, they start out in this and they're just racing, and then they've got like a couple pieces of equipment and now it's a shop. You know what I mean? It's like the same thing. You're like, oh no, I need to be able to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because now we've gotten to the point with what we do, people want to see what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we're buying equipment just so we don't take our stuff to the laser cutter that everybody else does.
Sure. Because
as soon as I make something and they cut the pieces, they go, oh, that's what Carson and Russ are doing.
Yeah.
So we're fortunate. We've got a 12,000 foot building in our backyard.
Yeah.
And you can lock the gate. Nobody comes in.
Yeah.
And every year when we have our budget to go racing, we set aside X amount for equipment, and our ultimate goal is to not have to talk to anybody in the outside world, that we'll be able to just sit there and make what we want.
Sure. No, that's the ultimate creative power, right? Is to be able to just concept something and just go, oh yeah, I have a 9-axis CNC machine. I can make that, right? And I don't have to explain it to somebody else, or give the knowledge or the secrets away, or whatever it is, or just having the ability to do it quickly, right? And not go, oh yeah, now 3 months later you're going to get back a prototype. I mean, that's one of the cool things I see now with both with computers, but also with 3D printing and all these things, is like a new wave of curiosity of people going like, okay, I can concept this and make it. Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, technology is awesome. And I don't want to say I'm old, but I look at computers and all that stuff and they're great. And I'm glad Carson's learning and he's able to put everything together. But there's a lot of things we talk about and we get to, and I go, be right back. I'm going to go make one.
Yeah.
And it's funny, years ago with my motorcycle accessories, I had an idea for a headlight, and I kept trying to talk to a CAD guy, and he's drawing it because we're going to make them. And I go, no, let me just go make one.
Right.
So I made one and handed it to him, and the guy shook his head like, how do you make that?
Right.
And they were able to then scan it and draw it and make it.
Right.
But I couldn't get the picture out of my head into his computer.
Yeah, but it's also like being able to make something real world, like, is also an advantage, because like we run into it with graphic design, right? Like when I design a t-shirt, I worked and ran a screen printing shop, so I know what is physically possible and what's not possible, and also what is going to be more expensive and less expensive, right?
Yeah.
Because I actually physically can make those shirts, right? So that was one of the things that we run into with graphic design, is when kids come up and they're like, look, I designed this thing. And I'm like, you can't print that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if you can, it's going to be, whatever, $20 a shirt for all these different colors and patterns and all these things that you've done. You don't understand the process of actually manufacturing it, right?
Right.
And then it goes into the whole side of like, how do you make the manufacturing part of it efficient? Like I was over at MagnaFlow, and they were showing me like some of the robotic arms and how they've refined the movements so that they can, instead of doing one piece, they're doing 6 pieces in the same movement. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back over here and make films. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's really cool.
Yeah, no, progress is, we'll see where it goes. It's going to go forward a long ways, and then it seems like every once in a while it just takes a giant step backwards. And the way the world is today, people like us that can make things, I'm sure we're worth something to somebody.
Oh, definitely. You definitely are. Well, that was awesome. I really appreciate you coming down, and we'll have to do this again sometime.
No problem.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Russ.